Hey, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. Today I just wanted to make a short little video talking about the possibility of a Fire Emblem Genealogy the Holy War remake, things that could be changed from the base game into the remake that would presumably be happening on Switch. The reason I want to talk about this now is because I've heard a lot of rumors recently discussing the possibility of it. Genealogy the Holy War, the original game on the Super Nintendo, actually came to Nintendo's online service in Japan just recently. And whether that influences the possibility of a remake, or if we're just going to get a port, a translation for English, who knows? But I figured at some point we're going to get a remake of this game. It feels inevitable during our lifetimes, so might as well go over the things that could be changed. Now, just to clarify, first of all, I'm doing this off script. I'm not I didn't script any of this. I put together these ideas based on things that I've seen the community talk about, things that I think they might change, things that I want to see change, things that I hope they don't change. This isn't a wish list. If all these things happen, there will definitely be some disappointment. They're also not ordered in any specific way. It's mostly just I assign them random spots. So yeah, let's hop right into it. We're going to start in the top left and just work our way through. Sigurd Nerfs. So if you're at all familiar with Genealogy of the Holy War, which I mean, I hope you are, at least a little bit, you know that Sigurd is the best unit pretty much in the entire game. Throughout the entire first generation, he pretty much solos every single enemy. He kicks all kinds of ass. He gets access to the Silver Sword in the prologue, which is one of the best weapons in the entire game. And then he passes it on to Seliph in Generation 2. But Sigurd is amazing, has a ton of movement. I get the feeling they're going to maybe tone him down a little bit. It might take away from the fact that the reason why a lot of people love him as a character both is like the tragedy of his story and also the fact that he's just such a beast in terms of gameplay. So I don't know. I could see them going either way with this. Do I want this to happen? I don't know. It doesn't really bother me that much, the idea of them toning Sigurd down just a little bit. He doesn't have like fantastic skills or anything. He just has the pursuit skill, and is that it? Does he just have pursuit? But he eventually gets access to critical through his weapons. But yeah, his stats are just insane. His movement is insane, especially given the road tiles and the size of the genealogy maps. But yeah, for me personally, whether they nerf Sigurd or not doesn't make too much of a difference. As long as they leave him pretty good and capable of defending himself, it's fine. I guess it would make things a little bit more difficult in terms of capturing castles and clearing out large swaths of enemies at one time. But yeah, he's far from my favorite character. I like him, but he's not one of my favorite characters in the game. So if they nerfed him, made him a little bit less overpowered, I wouldn't mind it too much. All right, so Rika Suzuki does character art. This is something that is actually pretty high on my wish list, personally. I'll show a few examples here, but Rika Suzuki has been doing a lot of art for the Fire Emblem trading card game, which is called Fire Emblem... Shit, I forget what it's called. I have to remember it. Cypher, Fire Emblem Cypher, sorry. She does a lot of art for the genealogy characters, and recently did Legendary Sigurd in Fire Emblem Heroes, and all of her art is just fantastic. One of my favorite things about Fire Emblem Echoes as a remake on the 3DS was the presentation, and Hidari's art, I believe that's how you pronounce it, for a lot of the characters was just so expressive and fit all the characters super well. It actually led me to buy the art book for the game, like a long time after the game came out. I didn't actually buy the special edition or anything, but I went out and got the art book because it's the art just resonated with me a lot. And Rika Suzuki her art style really kind of meshes well with the story and the aesthetic of Genealogy, so I really hope this happens. It sounds very plausible, especially since Intelligent Systems got her back to do both Resplendent Eldigan and Legendary Sigurd for Heroes, so definitely possible. Alright, so next we have critical not being tied to skills. This is something that I definitely see them doing alongside the removal of the pursuit skill. I find it unfortunate that they might consider doing this because the fact that both double attacks and criticals are tied behind skills kind of gives every character their own unique little specialization. In my current playthrough of Genealogy, which I'm doing on this channel, I had a bunch of different instances with Noish where he had like pretty amazing instances of activating both. I believe his other skill is, I don't know if it's a cost or if it's charge, or if they're the same thing, but he attacked multiple times and got crits, and at just like very random opportunities, and he gets this little bit of special pizzazz that he wouldn't otherwise have if every other character could crit. So yeah, in Genealogy, there are two ways to crit. You can either have the critical skill built in as either a class skill or as a personal skill, or you can have a weapon with over 50 kills on it, and then you get access to the critical skill. And then for every kill you get beyond that, up to 100, you get extra percentage of a critical chance. So if you get like 100 kills on Sigurd's Silver Sword, for instance, he can critical, but only with that weapon, but it has like a 50% critical rate at base, which is pretty fantastic. Next up, we have Recruitable Arion in Gen 2. I haven't made it this far in my current playthrough, but Arion is he's a sympathetic villain in the sense that he was manipulated by his father. He is not really a bad person. I can see them doing it in the sense where Altena comes up to him and talks to him, and then you get access to, presumably, I believe the holy weapon is called Gungnir. It's the matching lance to match with Altena's Gaybolg, but having two holy lances at the same time will be pretty awesome on two different dragon riders. I could see them doing this. I'm not sure how far they're going to go with the remake in terms of actually adding characters. And I have a couple other characters that I say that they can add, and we'll get to them and their likelihood, but Arion seems like one of the most likely from base Genealogy, not adding in other side games and that sort of thing. I'm not too attached to him as a character, but I think he definitely has some interesting support potential with like Leaf and Altena, so yeah, I'd be down to see this happen. Alright, so next up we have Erinys and Lewyn as a pairing becoming canon. I do not see them doing this. I would be very surprised if they did this. I will say that I think Erinys and Lewyn as a couple makes for a very interesting dynamic, especially for their children, Sed and Fee. But at the same time, this would limit character input for the first generation pairing so much. I cannot see them doing this, really. I think it is very strongly implied by the plot, and it is also reinforced as canon in a weird way by Thracia 776, which I guess is like one possibility. I believe that's the way that we're supposed to interpret that game, not specifically as like being entirely canon. But yeah, their relationship is very much so implied through gameplay and through the story. There's an event in, I believe, Chapter 4, where you can have Lewyn talk to Erinys, and like regardless of where their love growth is at, they just immediately get married. So yeah, I think leaving it like that is good. Definitely just leaving it open, so if the player wants to change that, they can. But we'll get to the support system in a little bit. Arena nerfs. This is one that I get the feeling they probably will change. And I'm not exactly sure how to feel about it, because the arena in FE4 is different from a lot of different arenas in other games in the series, because you can drop down to 0 HP and your unit still lives. Usually when you go into arena in other games, such as the Game Boy Advance Fire Emblem games, your unit has a risk of dying, and that's the trade-off. You go into the arena, presumably to get either XP or gold, and you can repeat it as many times as you want, but at the same time, you run the risk of suffering an unlucky crit or something, missing a few too many times, your character dies. In FE4, it's not like that. You can pretty much like pull out immediately after you lose. Your character doesn't die, is just stuck with 1 HP, and then they can immediately be healed and just head back in. I think if they choose to nerf this, it's really going to depend on how they mess with trading, because the economy in this game it's a weird way to say that, but the economy in this game is very limiting in the way that you need to use money, and the resource management of this game is a big part of what sets it apart. And the arena is an amazing way to get a lot of gold for all your characters. Especially since trading gold between characters is very difficult. So that would be the sort of thing where if they change that, they'd either have to compensate for it in other ways to get gold. They'd have to trade the they'd have to change the trading mechanic, slash the money management mechanic, or they would have to alter the way XP is gained. I could see them doing it, but there'd be quite a few changes that they'd have to make in order to rebalance the game around that. All right, so doubles not being tied to skills. This is one of the most controversial, I believe, opinions to have about the Fire Emblem 4 remake. Personally, again, I said it when I was talking about criticals, I like the fact that not every character can double, and I think it gives each character their own unique ability. It gives each character something special to set them apart in gameplay, as well as throughout the different classes in the game. And it also gives a lot of importance to the skill rings that you get access to, like the Pursuit Ring, the Paragon Ring, stuff like that. I hope that they keep Pursuit as a skill and not just as an innate function of the game. I wouldn't be too upset if they changed it, but it would be kind of a letdown. But I can understand why they would do it if they want to make the game more accessible for people who are just now getting into Fire Emblem 4, or who got into Fire Emblem with 3 Houses and Fates and Awakening and that sort of thing, where doubles are just an innate thing if you're faster than your opponent. What they could do is, with criticals and doubles, they could have it so that there's 2 different modes, like a classic mode. Not classic mode as in like permadeath, but classic mode as in classic mechanics. And then they could also have a more modernized version, and you just choose. I don't know. It's definitely possible. Giving the player options is always the best way to go. All right, nerfed Pavise. I don't think anybody's going to complain against this one, and I definitely want this for the remake. Pavise in the original game was essentially a skill that has a random chance of blocking all the damage of your attack. And I believe the chance is equal to the character's level. Unlike in later games where Pavise was just, it cuts the damage of an attack in half. No, it entirely negates the damage from an attack. And if you get unlucky, even if like Ira activates Astra and attacks 5 times in 1 round of combat, if you just get unlucky enough, every single one of those hits will just be blocked, and that could really screw you up, especially on some of the units that don't have access to Kanto. Plus, on some of those units like some of the generals and barons who have who sit on the thrones at these castles, who already have access to like defensive buffs. They already have access to healing every turn. They have access to avoid buffs. It gets ridiculous, and just taking away that one variable or just cutting it down a little bit would be saving us a lot of frustration, I think. Oh God, okay, avatar character. I do not want this. God, I do not want this. And I get the feeling they're not gonna kind of slide one in to this game because it's a remake. I do see them doing another avatar character in a future Fire Emblem game, like the next version, or like the next new Fire Emblem game. But for this one, I don't think so. Especially given the time skip, there's no way they could make this feasible. They'd have to do so many story contrivances to make it work. They didn't do it for Fire Emblem Echoes, but that one too has a lot of story contrivances that would need to be fixed. And I mean, in that one, Alma and Celica are basically the avatar, in the sense that everybody kind of talks to the player through them. But they still have personalities and everything, so it's not really the same. But yeah, I do not want an avatar character. Byleth and Corrin. I haven't played New Mystery, so I don't know how Chris affects the game, but apparently it's bad. Byleth and Corrin are both detriments to the games that they're in, both in terms of story and in terms of gameplay. I'm just not a big fan of the whole self-insert thing. I like being able to customize my characters in the game. But it comes at a certain point where it's like, I don't need to like put myself in the game. Like I enjoy customizing other characters, like characters that already exist that I can get attached to, but I don't like these blank slate characters. It's just not for me. I understand the appeal, trust me. That's just not the sort of game I like to play. Okay, so playable Eyvel in Gen 2. The likelihood of this one, I think, is pretty good. If they're really intent on changing a lot about the original game, Eyvel is, if you're not aware, Eyvel is a character that only appears in Thracia 776, but it is revealed that Eyvel is actually Brigid from Gen 1 of Genealogy: The Holy War. She loses her memory through a complex series of events, and she gains a different identity as a result. She does eventually regain her memory after the fact. I believe that's in the. I believe that's confirmed through Thracia 776. She does get her memory back, but I can definitely see her appearing. Definitely to wrap up some of the weird story beats with her children, Patty and Faval. Is it Faval or Fabale? I'm not quite sure. The translations are always changing, but she does have children in if you pair her up, and it is pretty significant to their character arcs, I think, to like have her be alive and have them meet up again, even if it's slowly over the course of the second generation and she like slowly gets her memory back. But yeah, she's one of the Thracia characters that are most closely tied to genealogy, so I could definitely see that happening. All right, changed. I phrased this funny. Changed familial relations. If you've played Genealogy, and even if you haven't, you might know about the situation between Lachesis and Eldigan. It's very. I don't know how explicit it is throughout the game, because it changes based on how the game was localized or translated. But the fact that it was implied that Lachesis was in love with Eldigan is, I don't know, it's just weird, and I don't think removing it would distinctly change either of their characterization. Just make it so that she like looks up to Eldigan as a role model, and less so about like, you know, being in love with him. The same thing goes for Larse and Shannon, but that happens a little bit later. We'll talk about that later. Translated original game included. I don't know if I see this happening. Probably not. Especially because they just dropped it on the Japanese Super Nintendo online service. It would kind of be unfair to them if people bought the online service just to play Genealogy, and then the remake just comes with the original game included with it. I don't see this happening. They didn't do it for Echoes either on the 3DS. They didn't include Gaiden. So yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I was originally considering putting in this slot Thracia DLC, either the original game or like an actual remake, and that's still something that I can't entirely decide on whether I think that's plausible or not, because there's no way they're going to sell you 2 games for the price of one. They're not going to package them both together. There's no way. Especially if they can sell both of them at full price or make Thracia a DLC. It really comes down to fan demand, I think. If they believe that Thracia has enough of a fan interest in it, because it is one of the less popular Fire Emblem games, especially overseas, here in the United States and in the West. And I mean, sales figures from like Fire Emblem Heroes can definitely suggest that too. So, I don't know. It's possible, but very unlikely. I do not think we see a Thracia DLC. All right, more characterization. This is a free space. There's no way they're not going to do this. It's like they're obviously going to give characters full voices. They're going to give them more conversations. Whether they do it through a modern support system or just more talk conversations like in the original, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, this is probably the thing that I'm most excited about, is getting to see more about these characters. Especially all of the Gen 2 units and the substitutes. They didn't really get a whole lot of a chance to shine. But they do have fans, and I think those fans should be rewarded for hanging in there for so long with so limited material to work off of. Alright, the substitute characters being missing. And I had a little frowny face, because I absolutely hope this doesn't happen. I don't even know how they would implement this. I don't think it's going to happen. The only reason I could potentially see it happening is because of memory restrictions and like having to get individual voice actors for every substitute character to replace their original counterpart if like the parents died and all that. I don't know. I don't see this happening. It would be super unfortunate if it did, because the substitutes have so much potential for characterization. It would be super unfortunate for that to happen. And I think maybe giving them a chance to be recruitable, in the main campaign, even if all of your children were born, Maybe giving them access to that, or having them make like little cameos or something would be cool. Maps are shrunken. I hope this doesn't happen. I don't think they're gonna do it, because they left Shadow of Valentia. They left that game's maps as they were, even though they were terrible. Some of the listen, I love that game to death. I love what Echoes did. For a lot of the characters in Gaiden, but God, those maps were fucking terrible. The one that comes closest to my mind is the one where it's like just a giant open field, a river going across it, and then a one-space bridge, and then just like a castle at the top. It was so awful. They can do a lot better than that, and it really did suck. But they left it. They left it as it was. They were very dedicated to doing a faithful remake in terms of map design, and I think they should be able to keep that for for a remake. It does add some questions about game balance for like the Footlocked units versus the cavalry units, but we'll get into that in a little bit. A third generation. This is an idea that was supposed to be in the actual original game back on the Super Nintendo, but it... Should I say Super Nintendo or Super Famicom? Because like it didn't come out on the Super Nintendo. But yeah, there was actually a third generation planned where the children would try and rescue some of the first generation units who had been basically turned to stone. And they try and rescue them, try and, finish off the Loptus cult, make sure they weren't a threat anymore, that sort of thing. Had a lot of potential for characterization. I seriously don't see this happening because Shozo Kaga left Intelligent Systems like a long time ago. And it was mostly his idea. But yeah, I mean, I think it could be interesting, especially if they do it as DLC. Having interactions between like the parents and their children could be awesome. I think that could definitely lead to some interesting conversations. But at the same time, I don't want them to like push themselves too far and go into like unrealistic fan fiction territory where it's just, mindless fan service. I do think we'll be getting enough fan service, I think, as it is. That being said, I definitely would play this. All right, so a modern support system. This is one that I'm torn on, and one that I'm pretty sure that if they're going to change anything about the game, they're going to change this. Aside from like weapon rebalancing. This is definitely going to be the first thing they go to change. And the reason why I'm split on it is because of the fact that in the C supports for a lot of characters in like Three Houses, for instance, Bernadetta is the best example of this, where she goes through character development in one support chain, but then she talks to someone else for the first time and she goes right back to where she was at the beginning. It's just very inconsistent, especially if you're watching them back to back. It can be very frustrating to watch the characterization kind of reset like that. That being said, I do think there are ways that the support system can work, especially with like being able to clearly state when you want two characters to be paired up together. Just being given an option to do that, so you're not constantly having to like abuse the jealousy mechanic or make sure that your units are never positioned next to each other, and if you do, you're going to get a pairing you don't want. That sort of thing. But at the same time, yeah, modern support system. It's again with that, it's you can presumably get like any of those supports at any time during the game, which makes it difficult for characters to comment on what's actually happening. They could add conversations on top of the already existing talk system, which happens like once per chapter. You can only talk with two characters next to each other after you capture a certain castle, that sort of thing. And they get to like comment on how the story's going, have conversations, give each other items, stuff like that. But in like Awakening, for instance, I was able to grind out like Robin and Crom support in like the first chapter because I just like replayed it, and I'm like, having these two pair up immediately would just be the best way to run through the rest of the game. So yeah, definitely. If they're gonna do this, which I can imagine they would, I'm hoping that they tread lightly and make sure that they're not leading to like inconsistent characterization with it. Okay, weapon rebalancing. This is just inevitable, but it's something that I felt like was worth talking about. They're not going to leave the weapons the same. In the original Genealogy, certain weapon types were far inferior to others. Swords were the best weapon in the game, so much so that just having the ability to wield a sword was like a point in your favor, regardless of weapon triangle advantage against other units. The fire tomes were way too heavy, so much so that characters like Eyvel, who has a very high speed growth, and like pretty good speed bases too, he cannot double a lot of the early game units just because of how heavy his starting fire tome is. A lot of the same goes for the axes, and I think axes are a bit less of a problem because there are only like, I want to say 5 characters throughout both generations that can use them. I'm trying to think. It's Lex, Johan, Johalva, Leaf, and Lachesis when they both promote. Is that it? I think that might be it. If that's not it, I mean, even still, not as common of a weapon type. So I think they could probably make those... They could leave them as heavy as they are and have that speed penalty, because that's what makes Lex's Brave Axe so great. But at the same time, those things are hella inaccurate. Like, very inaccurate. So yeah, just a little bit of tweaking on those. Maybe making wind tomes like not automatically just the best option between the 3. Anima. Is it Anima? Or is Anima Magic? No, Anima Magic is the 3 fire, thunder, and wind. So yeah, just rebalancing that would definitely help free up a little bit of aggravation. Okay, ways for Footlocked units to catch up. This is one of my hopes for the game, just because a lot of my favorite units in the game are Footlocked. There is a way around this in the original game as a result of the leg ring. It gives your unit 3 extra movement, which can help your foot units keep up with a lot of your cavalry units. It can help if you're trying to pair up a mounted unit with a non-mounted unit. Helps them stay together so that they can support one another. It also helps some of your best fighters get to the front lines faster. The problem is trading around the leg ring is very difficult, and a lot of the time people recommend that you just give it to Sylvia, who is your dancer, because obviously you want the dancer to be able to get to your leg units so that to your mounted units so that they can move again, because a lot of them are going to be doing the majority of the fighting. I don't know, maybe giving us access to more leg rings. I can see how all of this can get out of hand, because the reason why the Footlocked units are a lot of people's favorites, and I mean this also happens to be the case for me too, is that the Footlocked units are typically better than the non-Footlocked units at combat. Like, if you're to compare Holin, for example, with Alec and Noish, he's just so much better at combat. He has access to the Luna skill. He has access to Pursuit, unlike Noish. He's a fantastic fighter. And if you were to put him on a horse, he would pretty much completely outclass both of them, even at the time that he joins, when they've gotten like some levels under their belt. So at that point, it could just make it so that that kind of fine balance isn't kept intact. But I'm not sure. I think they could find a way to maneuver it in a way where it's like you can have a chance of leveling up a character's movement, maybe, like you can in Thracia. I think that's possible in that game. But yeah, I definitely want not being on a horse to not immediately be equated with this unit. Just don't use them if you want to play the game right, or if you don't want to do it efficiently. Because I think a lot of characters kind of just get left on the sidelines until then. But on the other hand, that is what makes Azel's promotion and Lachesis' promotion so great, is that they gain access to mounts. But you can't do that for every character. All right, memory prisms. This is another one that I think is just destined to happen. It was one of the best things about Shadows of Valentia. If you're not familiar, they're basically just these little cutscene conversations that happen before or after, or at some point during the story, where you wouldn't get an opportunity to see these characters interact. For example, you have one in Shadows of Valentia where it's Celica and her brother talking when they're children. before their mansion gets burned down and Celica has to escape and Conrad is thought dead. What I think they could do for the memory prism in this game, among other things, is they could have Lewyn and Manfroy's battle during the Battle of Valhalla. They could have Selif, Oyfe, Shannon, or is it Shannon? And all of the Tirnanog kids when they're younger, because that's just an interesting story premise in and of itself. Is you know, like, it's Edane, if she survives, it's Edane, Shannon, and Oyfe raising like a bunch of kids together, and that's like a lot of responsibility for what is essentially like one woman and two 14-year-olds. Like that's a lot of weight on their shoulders. So like seeing how that actually plays out could be interesting. All right, Johan and Johalva both being recruitable. This is something that I think they're probably going to implement, because I think they understand that people hate losing access to characters like this, especially in ways that can presumably be avoided. Johan and Johalva both have conversations with Larse or Radney. I believe her name has been changed since then, but I call her Radney just because it's easier to pronounce. With Larse and Radney, who's Larse's substitute. And if you talk to one of them, you can recruit them, but the other one just becomes, you can't recruit them anymore, and then they start attacking you. I could definitely see them doing something where you can recruit both. I think their characters have some interesting back and forth that they could do. I think they'd have some interesting support conversations. And I think losing access to one of them would be kind of unfortunate. That being said, I do think what they could do is lock the ability to recruit both of them behind a certain difficulty. In the sense that if you want to play at a lower difficulty, or maybe like in that, in what I was talking about earlier with Critical and Pursuit, they could lock the ability to recruit both of them behind a certain game mode, like classic functionality, like classic game mode, where there's no critical without the skill, you can't double without the skill, and you can't recruit both of them. Or you could have like a more modern version where yes, you can crit, yes, you can double, and you can recruit both of them. So it's kind of a more casual versus a more classic style. All right, playable Saias in Gen 2. Saias is another character from Genealogy. He's another character from Thracia 776, like Eyvel. He has very close ties to Arvis, who's a very important character in the first generation and second generation. Presumably he'd be playable in Gen 2. He's basically just Arvis's son, but he's Arvis's son, not with one wife, but with a different one, like one you would not expect to happen. I'm trying to be kind of vague in the event that people are watching through this and are not familiar, but he is directly blood related to Arvis. He would presumably, I believe it is canon that he does have the major blood of the Crusader, just like Arvis does, meaning that he would be able to use Arvis's Valflame after you beat Arvis in the second generation. So I'm just thinking about how I was vague. Is that even necessary at this point? I feel like if you watch this far, you understand. But yeah, he would get access to Valflame, which would be a really cool kind of ending to that weapons saga in a sense. Like, same thing goes with Arion, in the sense that like having recruitable versions of every character that have access to like every holy weapon would be really cool. Just seeing the holy weapons kind of fall back into the hands of the protagonists would be cool. That being said, the same thing could maybe be said about Ishtar, who has access to Mjolnir, which is House Frigga's holy weapon, but I don't know. I think her story would suffer if she had to be recruited. If her character was changed so that she could be recruited. But yeah, I think maybe having one of the other Frigga characters being able to use. Well, I mean, it's only one per generation, right? Maybe not then. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe just being able to get Mjolnir and then just sell it. I don't know. Okay, so Gen 2 support changes. These are very specific situations, and this is stuff that I think is so easy to fix. I can't imagine them not doing it, but it's stuff like Larse and Shannon being able to reach like peak support, if you know what that means. That's just weird. I don't think they should allow that. Same thing goes for Johan and Johalva and like the son and daughter of Lex. I think that would just be kind of weird because Lex is their uncle. Lex is Johan and Johalva's uncle, so having them be cousins, you know, like they can definitely still have supports and maybe have their supports altered a little bit if they're related, but we definitely don't want them to be able to reach like max love count and stuff like that. Same thing goes for Oyfe, I think across the board, and Shannon. That being said, they're both supposed to be in their like late 20s to early 30s. It is kind of weird having them to be able to support a lot of the units who are a lot younger than them. And then same thing goes for Edane's and Brigid's children. Like Faval can fall in love with Lana, and I think that's just, I mean, they're cousins. So yeah, just having like, I don't know, changing their supports a little bit, making it so they can't, you know, cap out. Just doing small adjustments could definitely make that a little bit less weird. But I mean, if you really want to be faithful, like make a real faithful remake, God, I mean, I guess you can. I guess you can leave it, but fuck, I'd just for the sake of everybody, let's just have it. Let's just change it, please. All right, so trading changes. This is, I think, the last gameplay element that I think we could change. The money management system in Genealogy is a pretty big part of it, especially because of all the key items and weapons that you have access to. Things like the Brave Sword, things like the Leg Ring, the Night Ring, especially the Paragon Ring. You can't directly trade these things between characters. You have to sell them at castles. You have to sell them to a pawnbroker with one character and then buy them back for double the price. This can become a challenge in and of itself to get items from one character to another, especially if like the first character can't even use the weapon. Like in my playthrough, I had Jamka inherit like an armor slayer after he killed a certain unit. And an armor slayer is a sword. Jamka can only use a bow, so he has to sell that. Same thing goes for like Arden. Arden gains the Pursuit Ring through a special event, and the Pursuit Ring is like a very, very good ring. It gives your character, whoever's holding it, access to the Pursuit skill, lets them double attack. But he's very slow. He's an armor knight, and he rarely gets the opportunity to use it unless you're very specific about training him. So I understand why that can annoy a lot of people, but in my opinion, it is a nice strategy element to the game. The only character who can pass money back and forth, he can't take money from characters, but he can give the money he gets to other characters as due, and also the two thieves in the second generation, Patty and Daisy, I believe. So yeah, the trading changes. I could see them doing it, like being able to trade a weapon instead of having to go to the pawnbroker, sell it, buy it, all that shit. But they definitely have to rebalance the rings, because in addition to the arena, having the access to the skill Paragon is really good. It doubles your XP gain, which dramatically increases the rate at which you can get your characters to promotion. It would honestly, if you could just pass it back and forth between characters as they take turns like going into the arena, that would actually really break the balance of the game in vanilla Genealogy. So I think that's something that they would definitely have to account for if they're going to change it to be more in line with, you know, current games. And like this sort of thing happens too in like Three Houses, like passing back and forth the hero's relics and that sort of thing to gain access to better skills, like increase magic range, that sort of thing. So it's definitely possible, but they have to rebalance the game around it. And all right, last one is 2D map sprites like Shadows of Valentia. I've heard people go back and forth on this. I'm not sure which one I expect more between 3D and 2D map sprites. On one hand, I feel like people are going to be off-put by the idea of 2D map sprites because of the fact that it's like, it would feel like we're regressing back to like the 3DS age of Fire Emblem. Like we're supposed to be on an HD console. Why are we not using full 3D models and that sort of thing? On the other hand, the original Genealogy has amazing map design in terms of visuals. I think visually the game holds up really well. I just think there needs to be a little bit more differentiation in terms of like character sprite when they're actually in combat. But beyond that, it's like that game has fantastic map design in terms of, again, visuals. Plus, the presentation of the game is already pretty fantastic, but having it brought up to modern times and having them like recreate the SOV style would be pretty great. That's actually my preferred way to do it, because the 3D visuals in Three Houses were bad. Like bad. Especially in support conversations. That's where it like stood out to me most, because the way the characters just animate is just so stilted, and I'd honestly just rather have portraits for each character rather than the 3D models where they're like, they extend their hand out when they're talking, or they like shake their head, or like put their head in their hands. It's, I don't know. I'd prefer if they went with the 2D sprites and just gave everybody a personalized sprite within their class for battle. I don't know. Maybe they could do 3D animations in battle, but on the map screen. Also, the maps are so gigantic. I don't know how the hell they would do it and make it look even somewhat realistic, like in terms of proportions between like your units and the castles, for instance. But yeah, I'm hoping for the 2D map sprites. And you probably hear that dog outside. Oh my god. But yeah, that pretty much that pretty much covers everything. There are definitely possibilities beyond what I'm showing here, but these are the ones that stood out most to me as being like either the most controversial, most likely, or the things that I most want. But yeah, let me know in the comments or wherever else if you're interested. Like what your hopes and dreams for this remake are. There's a very real possibility it gets announced at E3 or something like that, and it's being produced solely by Intelligent Systems. They're not like having help from Koei Tecmo or anything like that, which kind of helps to reinforce the idea of the 2D map sprites. But again, a lot of it is just like speculation. A lot of it is just very, very well-informed predictions, that sort of thing. But yeah, let me know what you think. I'm definitely looking forward to the remake, whatever happens. I'm probably going to end up getting the special edition because, goddamn, I fell in love with this game ever since I first learned about it. Has such an interesting story. Love so many of the characters. Love the difference in gameplay. Even as someone who fucking sucks at Fire Emblem, the gameplay is just, it's very rewarding when you do something right. So, yeah. Hope to see you on a future stream. If you're interested, I'm doing a Iron Man run of FE4 right now. If you get around to checking that out, I appreciate it. If you want to subscribe. If you're going to subscribe, I would probably subscribe to my main channel, not this one. I just kind of put random shit on this one and stream archives. But on the other one is like actual good content. So, anyway. I don't know. Take care. Hope to maybe see you on a stream of mine or on future videos, and take care of yourself. Hope you stay well in these crazy times. All right, I'll talk to you later.